This episode is sponsored by Origami Risk, an award-winning, adaptable, cloud-based platform that can help you and your business manage all aspects of resilience, such as risk, safety, insurance, and even the management of business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Because Origami's single platform connects all of these functions, it provides a unified view of risk, leading you to better decision making, thus better business resilience. To help you boost your business's resilience, Origami Risk has put together a collection of free ebooks and videos exclusively for the RESILIENCEPOD family. To get access, visit origamirisk.com/resilience. Enjoy the episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Resilience Pod, the podcast helping you become resilient in our world full of disruptions. You're here with me, your host, Reena Singh. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today's episode is going to be centered around digital resilience. Are you ready? With my next guest, who has been actively involved in shaping resilience capabilities in the Middle East. He has drafted guidelines, regulations, and even helped federal infrastructures stand up digital command centers. Wow, he believes that digital resilience is the natural progression for this domain. And so here we are today, ready to dig deep into what this exactly means for each and every one of us. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming my next guest on the Resilience Pod, Divakar Pandian. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've been doing this for many, many episodes, and I've been following RESILIENCEPOD quite keenly. And I think the topic's become very interesting when you think about how many episodes you've been doing. And I think it's an honor to be part of this podcast, really. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You are very welcome, Divakar. I'm really excited to have you on. And before we get into the nitty-gritties of this, what is digital resilience, Divakar?
Right. I think, in short, resilience of today's world, I think, is digital resilience, where you have organizations going digital and you have threats being digital. So you need to be able to manage threats in a shorter period of time, so to respond immediately. Well, in a bigger manner, to say, equipping organizations with situational awareness to know what's happening around them and to be able to respond and recover from these disruptions, and also manage all the big data that they have in terms of different analysis, and to be turning it around into actions based on what they are, what unprecedented event they're facing. So that's pretty much what digital resilience encapsulates, really.
It's so important, isn't it? And like we alluded to earlier, we're already there. It's not when is it going to arrive? We've actually been in this digital space for so long. It's more what organizations are doing, right? So does digital resilience enable technology-focused organizations just alone, or do we need a bit more than that?
I think it's a bit more than that. So for technology-based organizations, there is a focus around data leakage, cybersecurity as well. So if you're like a bank with digital banking services, you need to be up and running at the soonest. Or if you're like an organization like Netflix, you would need to have amount of technology resilience. So that is one factor of it, but that does not disqualify like an oil and gas company or a nuclear power entity from being unavailable or being excluded out of this resilience. Primarily the reason being critical infrastructures don't necessarily face one disaster, and we plan for one disaster.
Yeah.
Right? So when the champion asks you, so when is this RTO required? And you say worst case scenario, you say one disaster. If he says what if it's another one, you would say it's a double whammy, or you would disqualify that. But in reality, for a critical infrastructure, you never get to tap out in most cases and say this is force majeure. We can't provide power anymore. So in those circumstances, one BI analysis is not enough. Multi-layer analysis is critical for enablers. And based on the disaster, it needs to move around, right? Based on how these factors are being built in. So it's not a static response, it's a dynamic response. That's the idea.
Wow. And I wonder if you guys are listening, whether your organizations and your business is doing this consciously or subconsciously. So let's, the question back on you guys. is this happening? Let us know, comment on this video, or message me, message Divakar, and let us know, because we'd be really interested to see if you're actually taking a conscious effort to be a bit more digitally resilient. So really insightful there. Resilience, digital stuff. I'm going to ask you this question because people are going to want to know, is there tools out there in the market that helps organizations achieve this, or do they have to go and just do it themselves and start from scratch?
Right, it's a complex environment that we're talking about. So yes and no, to answer.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
Yes, because there's certain tools that you can customize to do partially some of these capabilities. And there are tools that you would need to put together. So you take a platform, you build a platform. In simple words, what I mean by that is a software that can link into 2 or 3 other softwares. So you have one software that provides you a dashboard, for example, and then you link that to an incident notification software and a business continuity software. So then this is pretty much like a digital sandwich of capabilities that speak to each other. And all you need to do is to feed the right amount of data to keep that moving and keep going, right? You could add on e-learning modules to it. You could add on analytics and to it, but the fundamental is available, but as specific isolated tools. So I'm yet to see a tool vendor in the market who's coordinated all of this together and said, oh, you as an organization, we help you build plans and also help you keep them relevant as times progress. So that's the pitch, and we have to see one tool off the shelf be able to do that, really.
Yeah, quite insightful. And there is definitely tools out there. I feel that another challenge with this is in businesses, there's different people doing different elements of resilience as well, so it's naturally siloed. Hence, there's a platform just looking at risk, and then a business continuity incident, and it's just really hard then to combine it all together. I know there are some that combine this, but it's no names here, guys, but I wonder if there are businesses out there who are encompassing all of this. Like, I don't know, what are your thoughts? Do you think there are businesses doing this, or is this a potential business opportunity?
Is this a Shark Tank pitch that we're creating? Well, I would say it is a great opportunity. Well, of course, me as a person, I've looked at probably 25, 28 tools, be it the Gartner Spectrum or from the GIS capabilities route, or while building a command center to design capabilities. Well, there is a challenge about organizations being very, very customized in their own approach, right? So I personally believe crisis management is very personality focused. So you can't have one-stop solution for every C-suite or the crisis command centers. It depends on their personality. Some of them would like to have answers thrown up to them or prompted to them.
Yeah.
Others would like to have certain pre-recorded information that they would like to follow as a checklist. So I would say for any of this to be enabled flexibly, there's no tool that I've seen in my experience of building command centers or doing digital transformation for companies that do this end-to-end experience in one go. So there is an opportunity. So I think we've put it out in the open for people to look at, and they could probably give us comments on how they feel about it.
Yeah. And folks, if you're listening and you've got this challenge and you recommend someone who's doing this already, let us know and share that. Or if you're a provider and you're already doing this, then get in touch and we can see if it fits. Because I feel that as we're looking more at resilience as a whole, we are actually trying to be more tech savvy, more digital, because it makes sense, right? Sure. And so the fact that we're doing this, a lot of people are doing this, a lot of organizations are doing it, will it actually help organizational culture?
I think so. That brings me to a very important point, and this is probably to all the questions right to the vendors who are out in the market. Why is it that nobody's building tools for non-risk people to operate a risk tool?
Right.
The terminal, like if I'm not getting specifically paid or monitored, if I'm a champion in 90% of the cases, to go in and do a survey, and I open a survey and it goes like EIAs, RTOs, interdependencies, they're like confused in the first 2 minutes. And even if they're okay with it, there could be a way we can help them in making this more simplistic. Perhaps you could call it as a recovery goal instead of a recovery objective or recovery time objective. We could call it data availability instead of a recovery point objective. So things like this to have the user experience of this change in a customer-centric manner. The customer is the champion. The customer is the non-risk person who's going to be looking at these plans and enabling them for who we're building this in the first place. So I think when that happens, when you're able to open like a social media page and interact with information that warns you as well as educates you of what the organization is going to face, I think that improves culture in a huge way. And that culture is a handshake. It's not just one person trying to improve. It needs both interactions. But we could be the first to enable that interaction really to make it simpler for people to understand. Specific, measurable, but a simpler term.
So true. And I love that. And I feel that it's our job as resilience practitioners to actually think about the end user experience too, because actually you're right, software and the digital stuff is built for us to manage the data, right? Because we're very savvy with it, but actually we aren't getting the organization to go and do BIAs, for example, so risk assessments, and are we simplifying the language, making it a user experience? I think that's a really valid point, and I really urge everyone who's watching or listening to really just take that in and challenge yourself to actually whether you are doing this or not.
Absolutely. And if you're a user of a tool, and if you have found a culture being enabled in a different manner than what we've spoken about, happy to learn. I think it's be a great conversation to have, so they can drop in a comment and we can take it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know that, as a lot of businesses are moving towards this, there are options to bespoke the way you deliver, say a BIA for your stakeholders, but you've got to go and do that research, right? And there's a lot of caveats to it. I don't know if you will agree, Divakar, that like you said before, one size might not fit all. So you really got to, as a business, understand what you need first before you can enable a technology or digital resilience. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
That's a very valid question. So if you've gone through most of the cases of how digital transformation ends, 70 to 75% ends with these tools just being a database. Unfortunately, that's true. And the reason is because there's certain maturity to start off with. And I think ISOs and local regulations like NCMA, SAMA, etc. in the Middle East can also agree upon a universal maturity. If it's a maturity scale of 0 to 5, you tend to think ISO 22301 compliance or any leading standard certification is pretty much 5 or 3. Well, ideally, it just means that you have achieved maturity 0, where you're now on par to completing the cycle, and now you can enable the next steps moving forward. So I think to have a tool enablement, a certification could be a good setting point, and the reason being there is certain awareness around this within the organization, and there's an owner to take this forward, and there's the leadership implementation. It also matters where the tool is being owned in a specific department. And it also is important who runs with it and who champions that to spread that awareness for people to buy in. All right. So it needs a consistent engagement. Is it too difficult? I don't think so. We do have your carrier KPIs. We do have your performance monitoring. And when these things started out as a maturity organization, human capital, it should have been difficult to make the transition and to implement that. But with consistent efforts, I think it's possible and it's necessary. I would want to be in a situation where I tend to forecast to my management, executive, saying, this is where our problems are. Let's be careful. If the problem happens, these are the specific tests, what we can do through a tool. And that is something you go to very soon.
Wow, I think there's some really insightful points you've made there. And what I'm taking away from it is, you can't just embed digital resilience and then think that's going to solve everything. There's so many more caveats to it. And that's really important. If you take anything away from this, then definitely make sure that you understand that it's not just about buying fancy tech, and digital means you've actually got a whole bunch of stuff to do in the background to actually embed it and change that culture, essentially, right? Which is what we've been talking about. Just to reinforce everything that you've said here, I'm going to ask it, and it might be obvious if you guys are watching or listening, but is technology being leveraged in any other domains?
Yes, there is capabilities that we're utilizing. So, for example, I've tried using certain tools to specifically identify what is the spend capacity that's going. So, if you're looking at certain risks in the project risk register, and projects being the larger size of the operations of a company, which is in a greenfield development state, the technology helps you pull up certain reminders to say, this is where the construction is going through. So if you have a layer of location mapped for where your construction is happening, and the locations are layered with a risk rating. So if there is a diesel generator in a specific place, and that's of a higher risk probability versus another location with lesser risk probability. And if you do these mapping, you'll be able to see this increase in flooding. Are there more sites expected to go underwater? If you're looking at the movement of people, you'll be able to monitor what is the secure and safe zones, as well as the customer journey where they prefer to move around these places. And building those level of enablement is possible. It just needs a little bit of creativity around it. I'll give you an example of creative, the most creative I've ever seen. So one of my first projects was 13 command centers probably being integrated together. And we had tools, and this specific geography's telecom regulator did not let those messages pass through these filters. So they had a limit on the amount of messages it could go through. So if you had to purchase like an instant notification tool, it tended to be super expensive and not efficient because the messages weren't coming in.
Right.
What did the client ended up doing? They went to an event management company who sets up wedding invites and bought them for like 1/10 the price, and it served the purpose for the next 4 years, sending out 10,000 SMSs every time, and you could even pick out location. People can RSVP. Just small tweaks in technology was available, and it saved money as well as it was a great story, right? So people bought in. They were like, every time there was a message around it, they were like looking at it. Oh, this was the tool that we have customized for our own enablement, and I applauded their creativity on that and their perseverance to build something. Right? It's not because something's not available in the market, it doesn't mean you don't do that enablement for your organization. So that was something very very.
That is so cool. And it just goes to show that you can be innovative and adapt, and you suit it to what your business needs. And I think that's another key point there. So I love that. That is really nice to have an example of that too. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we talked about like what is digital resilience, why we need it, does it actually enable a technology focused organization, if there's any tools out there, which there is, but we're not sure if it does all of that. Will it help improve our culture, which I think it will. It's obvious. And if it's being leveraged in other domains like risk and so forth. And you go into some really insightful responses and insights there. So do you feel, my last question, that we are ready for digital resilience?
Oh wow! Is this like $1 million question?
Yeah, drum roll. Are you ready, Divakar? What do you think?
So my thought, I think we are lacking behind what the industry wants,
right?
What the customer wants, and what the subject as a domain needs, right? So if it's seen the incubation or infancy stages of business continuity, it tended to be more on IT focused and came along piggybacking on the website.com bubble, and then went on to become more and more bigger as an organization resilience piece. And now we realize that there is value in digitally enabling this, and that's the only way your tools and the amount of effort you do to ask these questions, document these data, is going to be actually useful in terms of a crisis. If COVID is any example, I think It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. The type of
Yeah.
disaster is a marathon. And as people fatigue and psychological fatigue sets in, technology seems to be helping immensely for those organizations. And those with technology enablement uses crisis as an opportunity because they have played catch up and they've been able to manage and contain the impact. But those who don't simply depend on the government mandates and regulations and trying to stay on course and not fall out of the spectrum. So the difference is day and night. You either be resilient digitally or you end up being irrelevant in certain disasters. So your scope of managing disasters becomes much minuscule than what it was earlier.
So insightful. And I feel I want to add something to what you said there is if we're not enabling a digital resilience, like to drive our business resilience forward, we're missing a trick here because, like you said, when things are happening, you need that information, you need that data. Who's got time to look through hundreds of rows of data on spreadsheets? Now, I know, and I get it, there's going to be challenges because money. Okay, there's a lot of things that hold organizations back, and the bane of our lives as resilience professionals, whether you're doing crisis, risk, whatever, is budget. Budget. So we need to get creative, like the example you gave there. What do you feel about that if there's budget constraints on these things?
Right. I think it's a mix between cybersecurity, how sensitive you are about your information, your data privacy, versus how you want to manage that specific capability to be enabling your. For example, you could use Microsoft Forms, Microsoft digital tools that are available free as part of your MS Suite. Or if you are an organization using Google Suite, you could use Google Forms, etc.
Yes.
So what you could pretty much build a BIA sheet, which is digitally enabled, pulls out certain dashboards, and you can see the collaboration happening on real time. And there are websites like producthunt.com. That's pretty much where all of the startups use their tools and add them like a store. It's an open-ended, open licensed store. That's the right word. And you'll be able to download these softwares. So if you're talking about crisis management, Decision Tree, it exists. If you're talking about dashboarding, Power BI, that exists in most organization suite. If you're talking about survey forms for BIAs and collecting data, they exist. And for e-learning, you can use Vyond or any of these animation softwares out there, which is also free to use in certain aspects of it, in certain limited capability. So I've just given you 4 tools or 4 ways of using this without any additional costs, right? And when you've tested this out and this value seen, and when that makes a case, instead of us spending man hours or advisory support or training certifications, the ROI for this is going to be much higher. And the way it saves your capital drain if there's a disaster occurring, and the way it protects your insurance premium from not being ruined because of bad crisis management or a disaster management, I think it speaks volumes. And if you are an IPO focused company, you having a digital crisis management capabilities for today and tomorrow speaks volumes to the investor, gives you a lot of confidence.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a good pitch to give to the executives.
I love that, guys. If you are watching or listening and you're thinking, oh yeah, it's good, but I don't have any money, well, you have no excuse. There's ways around it, and you've just been given 4 examples. Let's get creative. Remember, just because we're a resilience professional doesn't mean we can't get creative in what we do, right? I think we sometimes forget that we have to stay in this like static box, but actually you just got to think a little bit outside that box, cliched as it may sound. So really, really great there. Thank you so much, Divakar, for coming on and sharing some of your insights into touching upon this digital space. And I want to pose the question back to you guys, and whether you feel that you and your business are ready for digital resilience. So comment below and let us know, and tell us what you think, right? Divakar, do you have any final thoughts before we close off?
Absolutely. I think my final thoughts would be that I'm speaking to the resilience practitioners, the resilience advisors, consultants, everybody out there is once you've experienced a disaster and tried managing the chaos that ensues upon in a disaster scenario, from that point onwards, we start re-engineering all the thought process around recovery strategies, plans, EIAs, risk assessments.
Yeah.
You would realize that a lot of this data can be trimmed down, can be more focused, can be more specific, and easily managed if that's the end goal. And if that is technology that helps achieving that, why not? I think technology does help in most cases for us to achieve that seamless data availability to manage a crisis and to help making faster decisions and future proofing some of your documentation work. I think it's a sound case to look upon, and that would be my view. So beyond ISO 22301, we can also enable that standard and add a layer of digital capabilities to it. So that would be my final thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Divakar. I think that's really insightful. And it would be almost a crime not to take this into consideration for your business, because you're going to get left behind. We're moving very fast in this space. And if you don't utilize it, you're not going to be resilient in our world full of disruptions. So thank you, Divakar, for coming on and sharing your thoughts. It's been such a pleasure.
Absolutely. I think it's likewise. This has been amazing chatting with you, Rina, and I think this is more of a chat and truly a podcast than like a one monologue being spoken about. So thank you for being a good listener, trying to guide us in the right direction, and I absolutely enjoyed it. It's a fantastic experience doing this. So thank you for enabling this for all of us, not just me, for the resilience folks as well. So thank you from all of us to you.
Oh, you are very welcome. Thanks once again. And guys and folks, thank you for tuning in today, whether you are listening to us or watching. I am truly grateful. So if you liked this episode, then please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, sign up to the resiliencepod.com site, and come and join us over on the LinkedIn family page. We are at over 1,000 of you amazing people globally. So let's continue getting this movement going. So, are you ready? My last question for digital resilience. This is me, your host, Rina Singh, with Divakar Pandian, saying bye for now. And until next time, keep on investing in your resilience.